How's everyone doing? You guys might be a little bit sleepy after lunch, but we'll do our best to wake everyone up. My name is Yamazaki. I'm a men's fashion, content, and lifestyle content creator, and I wanted to thank the US-Japan Council for having me and bringing this amazing group of people together. We're going to be talking about tastemaking and shaping culture between the US and Japan, and very excited to talk for the next 45 minutes, and we'll do a Q&A afterwards as well. But before we start, I want to do a quick introduction for both Emily and Travis. So please join me in welcoming Emily Fukunaga, Chief of Staff of Digital Strategy at Servco Pacific, one of Hawaii's largest and most respected family-owned companies. Founded more than a century ago, Servco has built a global reputation across mobility, automotive, and consumer brands, including ownership of Fender guitar. Emily brings a unique perspective shaped by leadership roles in strategy, operations, and supply chain transformation. So let's give it up for Emily. And then next we have Travis Fujita, General Manager of Beams America. For over 50 years, it is actually in February, I believe, was the 50th anniversary of Beams since it's been created. So it's been over 50 years now. Beams has been one of Japan's most influential lifestyle and fashion companies, helping shape global taste through its unique blend of curation, craftsmanship, and cultural storytelling. And as General Manager of Beams America, he has a big role in bringing one of Japan's most iconic brands to U.S. audiences and building a cultural connection between Japan and the United States. So let's give a round of applause to Travis. All right, so we're going to be talking maybe 30, 45 minutes, and we're going to have a Q&A at the very end. So just keep in mind some questions during the talk so you guys could ask Travis and Emily. So today we're going to be talking about tastemaking and shaping culture through the lens of Fender guitar and Beams. And when we hear the word tastemaking, we often think about fashion, music, and design. But at its heart, tastemaking is always about influence. It's about how certain people and brands shape what we value, what we aspire to, and ultimately what becomes culture. And all of us know Japan quite well. We either have visited Japan a lot or have Japanese roots in our background. And so it's played a huge role in our lives, especially at Fender and Beams. So today we're going to explore how both their companies, Fender and Beams, have shaped culture through Japanese craftsmanship, creativity, and the unique partnership between the US and Japan. And before we get started, I wanted to ask the audience, a show of hands, who has heard of Fender guitars? Yeah. Sorry. It's not a lot.
Too excited.
Good. And for those of you who know Fender, who knew that Fender made guitars in Japan? Okay, not so much. They know Fender.
Who plays guitar? Love it. Okay, I'll clap for that. That's awesome. I'm terrible.
Yeah. And then who knows Beams? Who've heard of Beams? Okay.
This is great. This is a great sign.
And who knew Beams is actually opening their first store in the US, in Los Angeles?
Woo!
Okay, wow.
Good too.
Should we trade places with them? They know our
Okay,
brands.
that's okay.
We might want to have them come up here.
Exactly.
And so, perfect. I think that's quite eye-opening. And when I was doing the research for this, I didn't know that Fender made guitars in Japan. And so the Japanese history with Fender is very fascinating. And it's something that I didn't know. I thought everything was made here in the US. And so we were excited to hear more from Emily. And also Beams. I love Beams. When I started creating content in Japan, one of the first content I made that kind of went viral was the Beams Shinjuku store. And so I owe a lot to Beams. And really excited to see what they do in the future with Beams America. And so to start off, Emily, Fender is one of America's most iconic brands, but many people don't realize, including me, that Japan played a critical role in how the company is today. And so can you share the story of how Fender entered Japan and why that relationship became so important to the brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really cool to be able to be talking about Fender in the home of Fender. Fender, right? Fender was founded in LA in the 40s. Leo Fender was not actually a guitar player himself, but he tinkered and he was an engineer and wanted to create something that musicians could use to express themselves. So he started in LA, and fast forward like 20 years, CDS purchased Fender, and really took it as an entertainment company. They went to their DNA and were not so worried about maybe the craftsmanship or the products themselves, but more about the artists and the branding and the expression, which is not a bad thing. But if you let a product like Fender go without R&D or without attention to detail, which Japanese are very good at, thank goodness, bad things can happen to a good brand. So luckily, we were expanding globally, and the guitars were starting to be made overseas. I think more as a cost effort. But luckily, we found stewards of the Fender brand in unexpected places. So we had these guitars made in Japan, and they didn't just take the specs and say, we're gonna make it as cheaply as possible. They said, what are we really trying to make here? We're trying to make a product that people can use to express themselves. We are going to engineer this perfectly. We're gonna get a little creative. We're gonna Kaizen as we go. And these are all things that are, I guess, very natural for Japanese, and they always have been. And I don't think they've been named maybe so much until more recently, until lean manufacturing and some of this tastemaking things have gone viral. But these were all very natural things for the Japanese. So when we started manufacturing in Japan in the 80s, and really partnering with folks like Dyna, who's our current partner. So we don't own Dyna, we're just very good partners for many years. They manufacture for us in Japan. And they've just taken these skills and these tweaks and these, I think, creative improvements to another level. And so, yes, we do manufacture in the US. We actually manufacture in Mexico as well. Those are our own manufacturing facilities. But we have these wonderful partners, and in Japan, Dyna is one of them. And we depend on them to make fun colors and slight experiments that maybe we might not be able to do in the US, right? Because just culturally, or people are so used to having a very certain thing coming out of our own factories. So it kind of gave us an opportunity to play a little bit more, if you will.
And I think I want to add to that is that made in Japan wasn't this amazing craftsmanship or very high quality image back like it is today. Back in the 80s or maybe the 70s, made in Japan was pretty much like made in China. So it wasn't looked as a very high quality product, but I think Fender took their gamble or the risk and went to Japan and created these amazing guitars. Was that do you know if that was something that they knew, or they just took a gamble and brought production to Japan?
I would love to say with foresight that we knew everything all along, but probably not. Probably we're looking for a more affordable opportunity at the time, and didn't necessarily know what we were getting into. But I think that the relationships with the Japanese manufacturer, but also the relationship with the Japanese sales channels. So a lot of the kind of Guitar Center equivalents there, some of the Yamada Music happens to be one of the ones that comes to mind for me. Those relationships were always so productive. I think they quickly realized that these were great partnerships to have as a brand.
And I think for now, Japanese made in Japan guitars, are they mainly made for the domestic market in Japan, or do you guys bring guitars to the US or abroad to Europe and around the world?
Yeah, we try to do as many for Japan as we can, especially now that we have the flagship, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later. We have a whole part of our second floor is dedicated only to made in Japan guitars. And we try to maybe focus on that market, but we also export mostly to Europe, not so much to the US directly, just because we have manufacturing facilities here. but there's a lot of demand. So a lot of US folks will go to Japan or find a channel where they're able to purchase a made in Japan guitar.
Travis, so Beams was founded in Tokyo, but was heavily inspired by American West Coast culture, especially from like UCLA college campuses. And of course, the founder recreated a UCLA dorm room for his first store in Harajuku. So it's like this very tiny, maybe, how big it was, like maybe
It's like a 230 square feet, so 6.5坪.
very, very small.
Yeah.
And he used a UCLA dorm room as like kind of the image or the inspiration for the design. So can you share, I think there's a lot of cool stories there, but can you share the origins of Beams and what inspired the founder to bring American fashion and lifestyle to Japan?
Sure. So hi everyone, thank you for having me. I want to speak a little on the history of Beams and how we came to be. This year we celebrate our 50th anniversary, so we were founded. So we were founded in 1976 in Harajuku. Now there's Takeshita Dori and there's crepes being sold everywhere and little cafes with pigs and things like that. But back then it was not a shopping mecca like it is today. I think now it's known for fashion and a lot of tourists tend to go there, but back then it was quite a shady, undeveloped area, and so it made sense for this store to pop up there when there wasn't much capital or anything like that. And our founder, Etsuzo Shitara, he is the father of our current president, Yo, used to run a cardboard manufacturing company. So that was the start of Beams, the origins of Beams actually. And he would go to Shinjuku, that's where he loved, going out to drink and meet new people. And he would spot ambitious young people with ideas and fund their ideas to create new businesses. And one of these gentlemen his name was Osamu Shigematsu. He was the first store manager for Beams, but he was born in Zushi, close to Yokosuka, where the US military base was, and there was a lot of interesting foreign, I guess, US culture coming in through there that wasn't accessible elsewhere. So there isn't social media, there isn't the internet, there's only print magazine and radio, and print magazine was still, in its early days. So any new culture was coming in very tangibly and really from, the GIs. And so there was this admiration for the things that they were bringing in, like seeing a pair of white jeans for the first time was, now I think it might be normal. I think someone may have a pair of white jeans on, I don't know. But it was not commonplace back then. And so the idea was to create a store that brought this new lifestyle and culture and introduce it to the Japanese youth. And the mission was to change and revitalize the youth culture in Japan. So it was a big mission, starting from a 230 square foot space, and possibly due to this restraints in size, creatively, we thought to create a UCLA dorm room. And LA was actually the closest US city from Japan in the mainland. So that's sort of where the buyers first went and encountered collegiate lifestyle, surf lifestyle, skate lifestyle. And the origins of Beams was bringing all of that and importing it and just curating a selection. So we never really made our own products in the beginning.
We'll talk a little bit more about the curation part of Beams, and that's pretty much their bread and butter. But if you've ever been to Japan and you walk around Harajuku, Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, the amount of Beams stores you see is quite astonishing. It's kind of crazy how many stores and how many sub-brands of Beams there are. There's Beams T, Beams F, Beams Records, Kodomo Beams. There's so many Beams stores. And I'm wondering how did the brand decide to do that role, that kind of expansion in just like physical stores? Is that something the CEO wanted to have a physical store in each like little area of Tokyo, or dive deeper into each section, or was there another idea behind that?
I might get scolded by our PR department, but I don't think there was a strategy behind it. But there is an underlying sort of, I don't know if you call it a strategy, but an ethos. And it's that our president encouraged anyone who had a passion to start something new. So our brand portfolio is admittedly very confusing because there's many beans sub-labels, like you said, like 40 plus. But those all came from individuals who are very passionate about something. Like Kodomo Beans, for example, came from someone who really wanted to recreate the Beams product that we have for kids. There's a bunch of different examples of that. So I would say it's organic. Yeah.
And I think I go back to Japan quite often, and the more that I go back, I realize the things that I'm really excited about in Japan are things like brands and services that essentially came from outside of Japan, and then it came into Japan, and then Japan just made it 10 times better, which I don't know if that's a good thing to say, but they just make that thing they brought in from abroad and made it 10 times better. So if you've heard of like pizza, if you've been to Pizza Marimo or Seirinkan, the pizza is incredible. It could be almost as good or even better than you could get in Italy. And you have MODERATOR or Studio Garrison, where you make salvage denim that is very high quality and made very well. And so why do you think Japan has historically been so successful at studying and adapting and elevating ideas from abroad? Start with.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, right? Like you think about even like Disneyland, like it's like ultra cute. Like it's cuter than the original somehow. Right? It's cleaner, it's cuter, it's more happy. But so when it comes to guitars, I think what you said is that they study all elements of something. They study, we talked about it earlier, it's the, I think yesterday, about the fish bowl, right? They don't just look at what's inside a tank. They look at the whole ecosystem. They look at what's downstream, what's upstream, who are the suppliers, who are the players, why are they playing, where are they playing, in their dorm rooms, right? So they look at all the pieces of a product or experience or service, and then they study every element with like this almost obsessive nature, I feel, to really understand it, not just superficially. And when you do that, I think you can just make a better product. And so I think if anyone took that time and took that mastery of anything, I think that's when you become excellent. That's when you can exude excellence. And I think that Japan has just shown that they can replicate that over and over and over. And like we're seeing in even academia, we're looking to the way Japan kaizens, or the way they manufacture, or the way they do experiences, customer experience. And we're trying to replicate it all over the world. So yeah, I guess it's just this obsession. Yeah.
Did Fender guitar, when they went straight to Japan, was the first round of Fender guitars that came from Japan, were they quite high quality? Was it kind of a surprise? Because I think back in the day, they weren't known for good high quality products.
I should know that. I don't. I'm sorry. So if anyone else knows, please let me know if you played them. But I think they were good, and I just think that they just improved over time. And I think it's this continued partnership that makes it strong. Like our team in Japan, they don't just say, yep, we want 100. They're sitting down and they're talking about plans, and they're looking at every single step in the manufacturing process. So, whether they're, I guess, US-based folks or or Japan-based folks, our Fender people know how to work with the Japan teams. And I think that's really important too, is that working relationship that allows it to improve over time.
Travis, do you have any ideas about why Japan is so successful at like studying and then bringing things from abroad and making it so much better?
Yes. To Emily's point, I think, study is such a core part of what happens when something comes into Japan. If I were to make a very broad generalization, I think Japan is very good at bringing something from 10 and then getting it up to 100. And maybe the US is very good at creating something from 0 to 1. But I think there's a lot of different reasons for this, whether it's cultural, historical background, and just like cultural philosophies. But at least in the realm of fashion, Western fashion was introduced into Japan where there was no foundation at all. So like the early magazines, it still carries that look to this day, but it looked really like catalogs, and it's so detailed, like why this button is here and why it was used and things like that. So I think starting from a fresh, perspective, having not been the ones who created, allows for people to come at it with a fresh lens. I think when you get so enveloped in whatever you've created, and like sort of the norms and joshiki of your universe, it's sort of hard to think of the possibilities for improvement and things like that. So that's my theory. Yeah.
I think I heard that in Japan during that time, it wasn't I think curation was part of it, but it was almost like teaching the Japanese public how to dress like the American. And so when you said in those catalogs, it was really, oh, this button should look like this. It should be buttoned all the way to the top. That's why it looks a certain way. And is that something that Beams kind of carries throughout to this modern day, or is it more if that was like an old style of kind of marketing or curation?
That's a great question. I think it has evolved from that, because it would be boring if you just followed a manual about how to dress. But there's like a keyword like time, place, occasion, like TPO. Like in these occasions, you ought to dress like this because this is the right way to do it, or like if you're wearing a black belt, you wear black shoes or whatever. But I think, fundamentally you need to have the knowledge of the basics, but then to break those rules to create something interesting and new. Yeah.
I think all three of us are, Japanese American born in America, but we have a little, a connection to Japan somehow. So I wanted to ask just like a little more background to all of us. Like, what's your connection to Japan, and how has that connection grown throughout your lives?
I go first. So I was born and raised in Hawaii. I'm half Japanese, half Jewish. So I really can't. I can do no wrong up here, right? Made me feel a lot better about getting up here. So growing up, no one in my household spoke Japanese. My dad actually, so he learned at school. So he was supposed to go to Japanese school. I think he never went. And then he went in college, I think for an easy A in Japanese. So my Japanese is actually better than his because I studied a little harder. But I still do Duolingo every day because it's terrible.
Yeah.
So I can order my sushi and get around in a taxi, but that's about it. So coming here and hearing so many people totally bilingual, trilingual, is amazing. And I love having this connection. But I think it's also just different experiences, right? we all have like our own unique story about what makes us Japanese, and some people like really identify. I think I identify as very Japanese. We have mochitsuki every year. Who does mochitsuki anymore? Japan don't even do that, right? But we do it every year, and we make shirts. So come to my mochitsuki, please. But that is, I think, more culturally, I'm Japanese. That's who I am. And I visit Japan and I go for work, and so that's increased over time, which is great because it's fun, you know. And I enjoy Japan and I enjoy being Japanese. But I think it looks very different. I think certainly than different folks who maybe lived in both or grew up speaking Japanese. And I really wish I spoke Japanese. Language is not my strong suit.
Do you go to Japan for Fender, or because Servco it's a huge company, right? And it's touching upon like automobiles, like Toyota, Fender. I'm sure there's a plethora of other companies. But do you go to Japan for Fender or something else under Servco?
Yeah, so usually I go for twice a year at minimum for Toyota. So Toyota and Subaru meetings. I will go and meet with senior leadership at Toyota. When we're very lucky, we get to meet. We used to meet with Chairman Akio, and we'll meet with Daisuke, his son. But we'll also meet with the executive leadership there because they want to know, as a distributor for Toyota in Hawaii, what is happening with the customer. We're their window into the customer. So talk about obsession, right? Like they're constantly concerned about what's going on, so much so that we need to come to Japan to tell them twice a year. That's an expectation.
And just a heads up, they are the biggest Toyota dealership network in Hawaii.
Yeah, we're luckily the only. And we just celebrated 25 years with the Tacoma being the #1 vehicle in the state.
Wow.
So we're very happy to celebrate.
Amazing. Travis, your little background, being Japanese.
Yes, my background, I was born and raised in Santa Monica to Japanese parents, immigrants, so I'm second generation, Nisei. I grew up speaking Japanese in the house and then English outside. I went to Asahi Gakuen on Saturdays. Took like the high school entrance exam in this building. Had like karate tournaments where the Mitsuwa is, all of that. So very much Japanese American experience. Played JA basketball, things like that. I think a very lucky part of my background is that, you know, my parents made a promise to their parents when they were gonna raise me here to, you know, see my face every year. So for the summers, I would spend in Japan, in Yamagata, which was a very rare and sort of blessed experience. But yeah, and then, you know, finished college through here in the States, and then first 7 years of my adult life, I was in Tokyo. So that was a whole experience in and of itself. Even though I spoke the language, just like assimilating like culturally and things like that. But to Emily's point, I think, you know, the Japanese American identity is so diverse. You know, different generations have different experiences. I certainly have a different experience than yours, or many people in this room. But I think it's, you know, beautiful that we can come together based on like a shared background. So I'm still new to, you know, the USJC community, but it's very nice to, you know, meet people sharing the same background, but, you know, just very different perspectives.
Amazing. I'm not sure if you guys want to know about me, but I'm very similar to Travis. I was also born and raised in Palos Verdes, or the South Bay, and went to Asahi Gakuen. Asahi Gakuen till Tucson, and then I went to Nishiyamato for Chuichi through Tucson. And then I kind of gave up on Japanese through my high school and college days because I always thought, what's the reason of speaking Japanese in this country? And it wasn't until my senior year of college where I went back to Japan and went to college and realized, damn, this country is cool as hell. So much fun, right? Because I used to go back to Japan to my grandparents' house, which is kind of in the rural area of Tokyo. and that was the only city that I would go back every year. And then once I went back to college, it's where all the partying, all the clubs, and all the fun things of Tokyo. And so I realized, wow, Japan is such an amazing country. And then since then, I kind of went back to study Japanese so I could speak more. But then with content, I've been able to work with teams and start to connect with more of the Japanese American community through business and through content. And so it's amazing to see this many people. I'm new to the USJC community, but there's so many amazing, accomplished people in this room. So it's been great to connect with all these people. But bringing it back to your Japanese American background, how has it shaped the culture or the decision making at your company? Just having that background as Japanese American.
Yeah, I'll talk about maybe the Mark company more at large. So I'm fourth generation family member working at Servco, but I'm actually Gosei, so my grandmother's side. We, started as a 2-car garage on the North Shore of Oahu, with, there's so many stories. It's either a $25 loan or a $2,500 loan. Super different. I have no idea, to be honest with you. But it started then. We had a Chevrolet dealership. We were super fortunate during the war. We were not interned because we had a relationship with General Motors, and they vouched for us. How crazy is that, right? But we did have our radio business taken from us. That was weird. I read that in old board minutes, that we had a consumer electronics business, and they, I guess they came in and raided us and said, "You're no longer selling radios." But no, we were super, super, super fortunate. But my great grandfather took that as a sign and an opportunity to really help out the community. So what other community services do we need within the Japanese American and even just the Hawaii community? So we got into banking and insurance and so more home appliances like washers and things that people need. And then into baked goods and jewelry and furniture, things that people don't need. And so his kind of expansive nature really took us there. And I think his global mindset, having this kind of, being Japanese, he always had this tie to Japan. So when it was time to expand and look for opportunities to sell cars, maybe an import brand as they called it back then, he went to Japan because that's what he knew. And he knocked on some doors and was able to get the Toyota distributorship before Toyota was distributing really globally. They were big clunky cars made for made for Japanese roads, right? Dirt roads. They were super sturdy, but not very fast, or not super pretty, I guess, for the time. But they were just always durable. So that's kind of something for them. But that tie to Japan is why we got Toyota, and why we now have Lexus and Subaru distributorships. If not for that, we might have had, what's it called? Opal. Does anyone know that brand? Yeah, that was also in consideration. So thank goodness for the Japanese relationship because it is, and I think it's no longer. So
you got the best car company in the world. Yeah. Best selling, probably, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. Toyota is an incredible car. We sell them in Australia as well. And so I think it's just, there's a lot of Ichigo Ichie moments, right, where we're lucky to have had that Japanese tie. And then I think when it comes to Fender, we only got involved with Fender in the 80s. So when CBS was selling Fender, and there was an opportunity to buy Fender, there was a consortium of investors that were getting together for that. And one of them was Yamano Music, who was a friend of ours. And they called us and they said, "Would you like to come into this deal?" And we said, "Sure, we love Fender. We sell them at our music store in Hawaii." So We were a dealer of Fender. We had no business in music. We didn't know how to manufacture, but it was this relationship that we had from being, they like to visit us in Hawaii, we like to visit them in Japan. And so that got our foot in the door. So that wasn't until the 80s. But I think over time, we maybe just being Japanese and being part of the owner group, we noticed how important Japan was and Asia was to this growing subculture of Fender musicians, right? And so I think that's probably maybe in the back of our minds as we continue to see Asia grow and maybe our open-mindedness to that part of the world. I don't know if that's something that every owner group would be open to. Yeah.
Travis, I think for you, you just mentioned that there's 10 people, nine or 10 people working at Beams America, and mostly local, and then one person coming from Japan. But for you, how has that shaped the culture or how decision making happens at Beams America?
Yes, we're still very early, and by nature, sort of cross-border organization. I think right now I'm spending like most of my time in Japan just so I can get consensus in Japan and get buy-in and people to cooperate. And I think in that process, what I've realized is like the importance of consensus building and talking to the right people at the right time, and not necessarily in like the board meeting or at the meeting, where there's like 10 people there. Nemawashi, it's very important, and just ensuring that people are on the same page and just getting along with everybody. I think building that trust before any sort of top-down decisions tends to feel more effective in a Japanese organization. And I think that can translate into American organizations as well. So really just listening to the team and just serving the team, and instead of being like we have to do this. So I mean, sometimes I think you have to do that, but at the stage that I'm in, I guess I'm learning more to gather input and sort of ensure there's a basis for harmony, and then making hard decisions when needed. Yeah.
I want to go back to Japan and talk about the Japanese consumer, because if it wasn't for the Japanese consumer who's very nitpicky about the final product, I don't think the brands or the companies will put all this effort in to create this amazing product. And so for Emily, many international brands view Japan as one of the most demanding and influential markets in the world. So I want to ask, what makes Japanese consumers unique, and why Fender is really pushing their footprint into Japan?
Yeah, you said it. They have such an attention to detail. They have really high expectations. And so that's why I think some of the best retail environments in the world are really in Japan. And I think that's kind of where this whole tastemaker conversation started with Amy, because why would a brand that's never had a retail footprint, based in LA, American brand, why would our flagship be in Tokyo of all places? And I think it's because of that appreciation by that consumer, but also I think our confidence in the level of execution that a Japanese team could put behind a flagship store. So after 70 years, our only flagship, our only retail footprint done by us is in Tokyo. And we're so proud of it. It's a 4-story, feels like a shopping mansion mecca, with the basement being a cafe, a Fender cafe, with acoustics and ukuleles. And then the ground floor being all of our featured items, including, by the way, F is for Fender, which is a limited run clothing brand. This jacket is F is for Fender, if you want to see what it looks like. I was really nervous about coming on a tastemaker panel with someone in fashion, two people in fashion. And I was like, what am I going to wear? Thank God we have a clothing brand that's really much cooler than I am. So that's on the first floor. The second floor is half made in America, half made in Japan. And then the fourth floor is our custom shop, where you can go and design your own guitar down to, you know, the headstock color and the wood that's used and the shape and the glitter paint that you're gonna put on there. So we love the Japanese consumer. They've kind of been our North Star of who we want to serve. But then also with all these, you know, tourists and people coming into Japan, we've gotten to service everyone. So, you know, I think it's due to that consumer and making a use case for them has made us be better than I think anything that we would make anywhere else.
I went to the Fender flagship store last week. I was in Harajuku last week, and this building is huge, obviously, but it's literally in smack dab, like prime real estate in Harajuku. If you know what La Fore building is, that's the landmark building in Harajuku, and it's right next door to like Human Made, right across the street from Google, next to Samsung. So you guys are right in the smack dab, in the middle of this prime real estate. And what I noticed there was that the first floor, there's a lot of tourists because there's a lot of just the flow of tourists coming in and out. But if you go to the second, third, or fourth floor, even to the basement, there's a lot of Japanese locals and a lot of locals that are trying out the guitars and kind of just being part of the Fender brand. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was just going to be all, you know, tourists, but it wasn't. It was all Japanese people. And I think that's where Fender is really curating this experience. And so I wanted to also ask, like, why does physical experience matter now versus online experience? And maybe the reason why you guys built this huge mansion, I guess, for Fender in Japan.
Yeah, who's been to a guitar store, like a regular guitar store? So there's lots of guitars, right? They're lined up. A lot of them are really dusty because no one's ever picked them up off the wall, because it's really awkward to play around with a guitar in a crowded guitar store when everyone's expecting you to be amazing when you're just learning, right? That's really embarrassing. And that's what most consumers had to deal with. And so we said, what would it look like to enjoy buying a guitar, right? Space, ability to play. Every single one of our guitars on the floor gets tuned, I'm pretty sure every hour. That's the expectation. They're constantly getting tuned. Every salesperson can tune by ear, right? It's just something that we train them to do. So we're just constantly making the consumer experience better. And we have this great product, not that I'm trying to sell, but always, right? Where it's called the Mustang, and you can hear it only in your headphones. So you plug it into the guitar, and there's also a Bluetooth version, in case you're interested. But you put your headphones on, and you're playing the guitar, and nobody knows if you suck, except you. But that's okay, right? And if you're amazing, you know, I'm sure there's amps there that we can plug you into if you want to show off. But it's really about the player and their experience and enjoying getting to, even if they're not buying a guitar that day, just playing around with it, trying something new, trying the American made when you own a made in Japan, or vice versa. So when you're dealing with a physical product, we felt that, you know, you want to know and love, we felt it's really important to pair that with an in-person experience. When the in-person experience isn't great, we thought we needed to improve it. So we also, you know, of course, want to be online, omni-channel, that's important too. But when you have a guitar, you're wearing it with a strap, right? You're actually putting it on your body. It's very different from a lot of other musical instruments. So like if you're thinking of a grand piano, you're like sitting behind it, right? Or a keyboard that sits in your home, or a drum kit. You don't travel around with it. A guitar is something you physically wear on your body. So we have mirrors all over this store as well, because people want to try their guitar on, right? And see how they look and imagine themselves with that pink, you know, glitter strap, right? And that's really important to us. So that's kind of why we created that.
And also for Travis, how does Beams think of the physical experience? And obviously, as I said, they have tons of physical stores in Japan. But for Beams America, I think it could be the same strategy or a different strategy. But I wanted to ask, like, what's the strategy for physical experiences for Beams?
Yeah, physical experiences are super important. That culture permeates our company, and there's so much respect for the shop staff and the store staff, as they are the ones, really communicating with the customer every day. And there's a lot of opinion, but if you ask someone that grew up in Japan in like the 80s or the 90s in Tokyo, I would almost guarantee that they would say that the Beams shop staff were like really, really cool. And you wanted to be like that. It wasn't really something looked down upon as like, it's like a service job or anything like that. It was sort of something to strive for. But physical retail is important for us because, like you said, we're selling a physical product, and we're not necessarily selling a commodity. You can buy toilet paper on Amazon, and you can certainly buy, a fashion item or a nice dress on Amazon, but you're probably going to return it or there's a lot of online returns because you don't know what it's going to feel like unless you try it on, how it fits, and things like that. So just having a physical experience with sound and talking to the shop staff who might have insight into why or like how to style this is really important. So I think it just comes down to like generating more of a feeling, and you can't. There's a limit to what you can do online. There's certainly a lot you can do, but yeah. So we're still early in our physical retail expansion in the U.S., but that's sort of I think the ethos that we'd like to carry.
Yeah, if you guys ever been to a Beams Japan store, all of the shop staff are so cool. They dress so well, and I didn't know this, but you could actually ask them to kind of style certain pieces, like Travis was saying. You could get help on how to get dressed, and when I went to create content, one of the shop staff managers came out and dressed me, and it's something I wouldn't wear, and so those are things where they push you out of your comfort zone, and Beams really helps you dress really well in that way. So it's very interesting how Beams America does it in the future, so I'm very excited. Next, I want to talk about how both Fender and Beams, they started kind of from the US. So Fender, born and raised in America. Beams started from kind of the Western American fashion, brought it to Japan, elevated it, and now they're bringing it back to US. So why do you think that process of like bringing something from abroad and back into Japan and then back out has been successful for both of your brands, and can it still be done today?
I think distance, like time and geographical distance, creates novelty, like cultural novelty. When Beams first started doing Ivy prep fashion and proposing that, in the US, that was sort of out of fashion already. It was sort of the start of the counterculture and hippie movement. But due to the lack of information, the Japanese thought that was like the thing that was going on right now. And so I think there's a very interesting thing that happens with distance and time. And now that there's social media and information is instant, this situation has sort of changed. But just when you have different people with sort of different sensibilities, take something and make it their own, become something new. So, for us, like the big picture is we were inspired by American lifestyle and fashion. We brought it to Japan and sort of made it our own and updated it for modern times or different fabrics or silhouettes, and then we're bringing it back. And I don't know how that's going to land in the US, to be honest. So I'm curious to see, and I'm curious for any new things that can emerge by us being here. and also a big part of what we want to do is bring more of Japan itself to the world. So we have a sub-label called Things Japan that's focused really on like Japanese craft and pop culture and art and bringing that. So that's, you know, part of the equation as well. But yeah, I really don't know. I think I'm excited. Yeah, we'll see.
Something that you said earlier really resonated. Like when you're so into what you created, you make so many assumptions and you might not even know why you put that button there or you made it zip this way or put, you know, the headstock all on one side. And so when you're studying it, you have a chance to take a step back. You're not so into it. And I think when you go across cultures, even more so, you can observe something for the first time and put your own spin on it. So I think that's probably why, because you're appreciating what's good about it, but you're also thinking about, well, where maybe the opportunities or tweaks. And I think everyone can just continue to improve on what was there before. And so I think a lot of this cross-cultural global partnerships or sharing of brands and food and culture and all these things, I think is just, I think it's benefiting the consumer, which is great. And I'm excited to see how we keep kind of trading back and forth. I think it will continue.
Right. I think it's going to be a lot of things going back and forth the next few decades because as you guys all know, Japan is crazy hot right now. And I'm sure any of your friends on social media, one of your friends on stories is in Japan somehow. So I think this cross-cultural exchange is going to continue for the next, hopefully, like forever, hopefully. But we're almost out of time, but I wanted to do some Q&A. So I wanted to share it, open up the floor to the audience. Before you ask a question, if you could state your name and your organization, and we could open up the floor to some questions. Anyone?
So trends kind of come and go, right? They are relevant in the time that we are in now. So how do you all maintain a consistent identity as a brand or a company while still evolving to keep up and stay relevant?
Great question. Thank you. I think it comes back to the whole theme that we talked about in studying. There's this keyword that comes up time and time again in at least our product teams, and that word is urazuke in Japanese. So why does something exist? You know, why should we do it? Things like that. And then I think when you have those fundamentals down that aren't really swayed by trends, you can sort of break the rules and adapt to modern times. But I think having that backbone is very, you know, important, and I think something that we constantly think about.
Thanks for taking that first. I was like, I don't know. That's a great question. But I think at the end of the day, you know, your fashion, what you put on your body, and what music you can create or even replicate is about self-expression at the end of the day. And I don't think that that will ever go out of style, right? Like guitars may or not be in, you know, the latest music trends or things like that, but I think players will always want to be able to express themselves, and I think the easier you make that for them, the better.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll ask you later.
Thank you for your talk. My name is Nobuo Komodo. I'm a college student and a college of art and design. I was curious to ask, because culturally markets are different between Japan and US, as you branch out like with a new store within a different country, in this case the US, whether you have like a different marketing strategy towards this community.
I assume that's for me. Thank you. Yeah, this is a very big challenge of ours, and something that we continue to brainstorm and iterate on. But we're introducing a brand to people, majority who are meeting us for the first time. They don't have the 50-year context or understanding. So we really have to distill it down into our core sort of principles, and even like product lines, as Jeff said, we have 40 plus sub-labels, but I don't think we can bring all of those. So really selecting what we think will resonate with the US customer. So there's a lot of information and data gathering that we have to do in refining it. But yeah, so to answer your question, it's a work in progress. Yeah.
Maybe I'll comment going the other way, like how did we open in Japan? I think it's really important to have people who are culturally fluent in both languages. So not fluent in the language, but if I was in charge of opening up the Japanese flagship and hired a PR team and hired a marketing team and all of that, I wouldn't know how to judge their pitches. But I think Travis, like, you get it, right? Like, you lived in both places. You're part of the cultural fabric of both. And I think, to me, we needed someone like that. So luckily, we had someone in Japan running our APAC operations who had spent 20 years in Japan. So he's American, played guitar, rode motorcycles, very cool guy, right? And then had a Japanese wife and a Japanese child and fluent in Japanese and lived there. And so when he was crafting this, it was truly, I think, authentic to both sides of the house, which is, I think, when it can really succeed.
Hi, Mika McDonald. Yeah, it goes on. My full-time role is as a creative director for civil rights org, and then part-time designer, illustrator, actually with her. But and we're often doing like running brands, interestingly, like running brand apparel. But one thing that I find myself struggling with a lot is creating something that I know like a consumer or a client or a customer really likes, versus like spending that really lights my personal fire, even if I don't know how other people are gonna like it. And so I'm like wondering, as creatives and as folks who like work in marketing, how do you balance that so you don't like lose yourself in it too?
My answer is really fast. I feel like I don't have a really good sense of style, so I always love to put myself in the mindset of, if I did have great style, what would I like? So I think I'm more customer obsessed because I'm a bad customer myself.
I think it's very important to be customer obsessed and cater to customer needs. But at the same time, as I came on board at Beams and I'm doing my research and really trying to get at the core of what created our value, I think it's people who are passionate about something and just following that. I think in business, or at least in our business, we need to generate sales. So there's a certain level of anticipating what customers want and making that. But I think it's important to have a little room for play. I think there was like a situation where you talked on that, Emily, and experimentation. But if you get rid of that entirely, then I think a brand can go, in a place that's not very good. So keeping space for that, I think. Yeah.
Do we have time for one more question? Or?
One more question.
One more question.
So Travis, you had mentioned how Japan's really good at the 1 to 100 grid. America's that 0 to 1 type thing. But obviously there's the cultural piece that I think is really valuable. But I guess how I work in manufacturing, it's like how do you get people to care? Because I feel like that's such the biggest thing that like Japan is so proud of everything that they like everyone in the process, right? Whether it's someone on the manufacturing floor, on the line, or the salesperson that's helping have that unique experience. I'm just kind of curious to hear, you know, especially as you're bringing your companies to America. Obviously, you're going to be employing Americans, assuming, but just how to assure that, or I'm just kind of curious as leaders, like how you try and like curate that.
That's a great question. I think the most effective way to do it is, or I guess what we want to achieve is for everyone involved to treat it as their own, you know, project or passion, and not simply like a job or something that they're told to do. And to do that, I think you have that person or persons has to come to that conclusion themselves. So I think in a sense, like creating spaces and moments for communication with the person who actually created something, or the person with the, I don't know, the passion that's driving this project. Like who's the owner of it? Just making sure that that passion is conveyed directly, ideally in person, and just doing that over and over and over. I think. You know, I'm about to embark on that journey, so I don't know if I'm in the place to give you advice, but I think that is what I feel. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to wrap it up with one last quick question. What does the future look like for vendor and meetings? So I believe it could be quick, but just what is the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think coming off of COVID, a lot of people played guitar, tried it out during COVID. Now it sits under their bed,
That's
collecting dust. We know that, and so we're just trying to get people to take their guitars back out, find the time, excite them again. But I think, you know, we're in a really solid place, and we know that people churn out of guitars. We just need to keep the top of the funnel open as wide as possible to get people to try to play guitar, and really maybe if they're not going to be someone who plays on stage someday, just, you know, fiddling around and playing in their dorm room, or just for fun on a Sunday with some friends in the garage. So I think, you know, we're always trying to expand who our playing audience is. But, you know, I don't see it going away, but I also, like, I don't see another COVID situation where everyone picks up a guitar for a short time.
For us, you know, this is our really like first year in the North American market. And our company slogan is Happy Life Solution Communities. It used to be Happy Life Solution Company. That word itself sort of feels like Japanese made English. But what it gets at is we want to provide solutions that make your life better and make you happier, and spread that across communities. And so I hope that we can do that in the US through you know, fashion, also, you know, other areas like food and beverage, music, just bringing that ethos and helping to make, you know, the world a little better. So yeah, that's what's coming. And as for our first steps, we have our online store that's open right now, and we're looking to open our flagship retail in the Arts District, very close from here, this year. So
amazing, we're looking forward to it. We're out of time now, so I just want to thank you all for listening along and asking all those amazing questions. Can we give another big round of applause? Thank you to the US Japan Council for bringing us together, and thank you.
Thank you.
Now I think everyone's ready to go to Japan and do some shopping, huh? So we have some snacks from Cafe Dulce, some donuts if you did get a chance or see them. So we'll take a quick, we'll be back here in about 3 minutes to start the next panel, but please go take a
Thank you.
Yeah.